Hi, fair use educational purposes. This is another quick one on the credentials fallacy, what it is and how to respond to it. Be about 4 or 5 videos again, a series of them, not only one because it'd be too long. I'm going to make them short. The credentials fallacy is a logical fallacy, which occurs when someone dismisses an argument simply because they believe that the individual who made that argument doesn't have credentials in the field being discussed. This fallacy is frequently used in discussions on various topics, so it's important to understand it. As such, in the following article you will learn more about the credentials fallacy, see some examples of its use, and understand what you can do in order to counter people who use it. What is the credentials fallacy? Well, the credentials fallacy is a logical fallacy which occurs when someone dismisses an argument simply because the individual who made that argument doesn't have formal credentials in the field being discussed, or doesn't have credentials that are viewed as sufficient. In this context, the term credentials refers to qualifications or achievements which demonstrate that their holder possesses a certain degree of knowledge or expertise in a given field. Not that, to me, it wouldn't mean that anyway. Even if they had that, I'd be like, no, because it's all based on the Prussian education / mimicry system, using the servile and utilitarian arts, yeah, which is basically just to give you enough to run the machines and stuff like that, keep you dumbed down. It's not a true education. This means that, for example, having teaching experience could be viewed as a type of relevant credentials when it comes to talking about education. Like I said, Prussian education system. Well, a PhD could be viewed as a type of relevant credentials when it comes to discussing a scientific field. Again, you know what I mean? All this stuff, it's just stuff that's out there. People believe it, they take it in, they take it as gospel and stuff like that. We're actually checking it first. Yeah. The credentials fallacy is a type of informal logical fallacy, since there is an issue with its underlying premise, and namely with the assumption that if someone doesn't have credentials in a certain field, then any argument that they make can be immediately dismissed. This premise is problematic, since even though credentials should certainly be taken into account in some cases, not all cases, yeah, like I said, it's fallacious to assume that if someone doesn't have the necessary credentials in a given field, then everything that they say must be wrong. The credentials fallacy can be categorized as a genetic fallacy, since it focuses on the origin of the argument rather than on the argument itself. More specifically, it can be categorized as a type of an ad hominem attack, since it personally targets the individual who is making the argument. Note that the credentials fallacy is associated with the concept of credentialism, which is a phenomenon of over-reliance on credentials in situations where they aren't relevant or necessary. However, the credentials fallacy can also be used in situations where one's credentials are relevant or necessary. Specifically, this occurs when the attack on someone's lack of credentials isn't supported by valid reasoning, as in cases where people fail to explain why the lack of credentials is relevant to the discussion, or in cases where people only mention an individual's credentials while ignoring their original argument entirely. We get this a lot, basically, saying, "Oh, you're not a scientist, and all this lot, and you ain't got credentials, you ain't got a PhD, all this sort of stuff." Everybody is a scientist. Science doesn't belong to an institution or any particular individual. It belongs to everybody. Anybody can be a scientist. The definition of science is the exploration of the natural world and everything else around you. Yeah? Anybody can do it. You don't need credentials to be a scientist. But that's what they make people believe, what they make people think. Examples of the credential fallacy. Right, we're going to do this in the next one, because like I was saying, I'm going to make them quite short. Okay? Thank you for watching this one. Leave a comment, whatever. We'll see what people have to say. If there's anything that you disagree with, let me know and I'll address it. All right, thank you. Bye.